Hey guys, Archer here, first year medical student. Since the UCAT is coming up, I thought it'd be a good time to have a video addressing the things you should definitely not be doing in your preparation and things that you can be doing instead to make sure that you smash the UCAT on your first try. Each of these things that I mentioned that you shouldn't be doing are super important to eradicate before you step into your exam. Using these tips, I actually sat the UCAT last year in Australia as a year 12 student, and I managed to score my top 3 university preferences for med schools. And in fact, this was the top preference for each of the states that I actually applied. So we're going to be going through why practice doesn't really mean perfect in the case of the UCAT. And then we're going to look at the Kolb's experiential cycle and how that can help us in learning the UCAT better the first time. And then we'll have a discussion about question banks and UCAT prep companies. All right, let's get started. Okay, so everyone knows the adage, practice makes perfect, but that doesn't really apply here. And hear me out. The UCAT is an exam like none other that you would have sat before in school, and that's because it has a completely different assessment criteria. Therefore, since it's completely different to what you've done before, you need to have a completely different strategy to make sure you get it right. Many of your school tests and exams are knowledge-based, whereas the UCAT is a skill and aptitude-based test. This means that your subjects in school are more about testing if you have a sound understanding and knowledge of the stuff that is covered in something like a course outline. However, with the UCAT, it's not about that. You aren't tested on your knowledge at all. You're tested on your knowledge of a skill and the ability to approach different question types at incredible speeds. Realizing the gravity of this is the first step in making sure that you don't make this crucial mistake in preparing for your UCAT. In reality, there's a lot more thinking and hard work involved in preparing for the UCAT than there is typically for a school topic. The major difference here is in how you actually are able to get better at the subject. So for example, with something like biology, which is a knowledge-based topic, you'll be able to do questions, you'll be able to figure out where your weaknesses lie, and then you can fill up those gaps of knowledge quite quickly, and you can improve very quickly as well. And this is possible with things like active recall and spaced repetition, which I've mentioned in tons of my other videos. Therefore, practice can make perfect in this cases quite quickly, but that's not the case with the UCAT. It doesn't happen here in the UCAT because it's a skill-based test, which is not testing your knowledge of things, it's now testing your knowledge of a skill which is used to answer these question types. In reality, most of the students who actually sit the UCAT don't actually realize the cognitive intensive skills that are required in order to make these complex evidence-based decisions. And that's because it's completely different to what they're used to from school. This means you can't even solve the question correctly because you don't have knowledge of the skill. And it means if you're attempting a question without a cognitive approach, you won't be able to familiarize similar scenarios and make connections between these sort of same question types and get better at doing the process quicker. And most importantly, without this structured approach, you won't be able to pinpoint exactly where your weaknesses are so that you can fix them up and refine your technique and make sure that you're able to have 100% accuracy on all of the same question type that you see in different variations. The UCAT really requires a thoughtful and methodical process in order to score a competitive score. And in Australia, at least, to get an interview, you want to have a score at least 90 to be competitive. Okay, so let's take a look at how Kolb's experiential cycle can help us in explaining how we can learn better. Okay, so basically if we take a look at Kolb's experiential cycle, which is just a theory about how we naturally learn and develop when learning new things, you'll start to see the importance of learning how to do the question type before attempting practice on your own. Okay, so let's dissect this a little bit by looking at each of the 4 steps within this cycle and how practicing just questions alone does not help us here. Okay, so the active experimenting stage is going to be severely underwhelming, and that's because you're not going to get anything from the experience and you're not going to have a game plan the next time when you see a similar question. There will be a poor concrete experience, and that's because the process itself and the experience will be confusing and overwhelming, and particularly when you're in those time practice scenarios when you have to answer these complex questions so quickly. There will be a poor reflective observation, and really the only observation that you'll be making here is that the UCAT is giving you so much emotional distress because it's so difficult. And consequently, you won't have anything to rely on to familiarize yourself with these sort of similar questions that you're seeing. And then you won't be able to refine your approach. At the abstract conceptualization stage, essentially you're just going to come to the conclusion that the UCAT is just difficult and you're not really up for this. There's no positive outcome from doing this question. And this is the point exactly where a lot of people start to think, oh, well, I'm not getting it right now. I just need to put more hard work into it to get the results that I want. Or maybe I have to believe in this practice means perfect. So I've got to do a lot more and keep practicing. And then eventually all my problems will go away and I'll be good at the UCAT. This is the trap that a lot of students fall into, where they just do thousands and thousands of questions, just churning them out because they think it will help them in the long run in getting better at the UCAT, but what they just find is that they've just improved a little bit across doing 1,000 questions. And that's completely unnecessary, because if you spend the right time in learning the question types, you'll be able to reduce the amount of practice that you need to do in terms of questions significantly, and it'll be much more meaningful. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about what the problems are with mindlessly doing thousands of questions. Okay, so there's a bit of evidence that it is useful to do these tons of questions for things that are knowledge-based tests and exams, but as we said before, it's not really translatable to the UCAT so much. With this, a lot of people are spending a lot of time and effort into churning out these questions. They do this in the hope that eventually it might pay off, but what they find is that there's no real good outcome at all. You won't be achieving what you aimed for at the very start, which was to get more speed and accuracy when you approach these questions. A lot of people do this to the point where they start to blame themselves as not being smart enough or good enough for the UCAT. But then they continue to spend hundreds of dollars on UCAT preparations in the belief that if they put the money into tutoring, then they'll get enough out of it and they'll instantly become smarter. And it's really never ever like that. But it's just like a level of security in giving that money away, and you think that you're doing the right step in getting better at the UCAT, but it requires a lot from yourself as well. Okay, so this is where the UCAT prep companies often start to prey in the insecurities of students, because the students typically just want to see lots of questions written out for them, and they think that will help them prepare the best way. In fact, some questions made by these UCAT prep companies are much harder than what the UCAT exam really is. And that's really bad, because you're making unrepresentable questions of what you actually see in the exam, and you're preparing for something completely different. It's just a waste of time. And then the students typically don't perform well, and the companies just sort of say that they just didn't learn it correctly the first time, even though it's their teaching strategies which were at fault. In fact, this is actually the reason why a lot of UK students perform a lot lower than Australian students. And that's because they often go just to churn out tons and tons of Medify questions. And all these reasons that I've mentioned are the reason that we hear stories of highly elite and academic students from prestigious schools not scoring well in the UCAT, and that's where they downfall in the medicine application process. However, in the end, it's still on you to be proactive and diligent in your learning process to make sure that you're making the right decisions to set yourself up well. Also, on another note, if you think about it, why would you go on and move on with another question when you haven't even learned how to do that question properly in the first place, or learnt about exactly what you've done wrong? If you don't fix that up then and there, then you're just pretty much accepting to use flawed techniques and bring that into the exam with you, which is not what you want. Instead, what happens is you're just wasting your time on trying to correct a bad skill that was doomed from the beginning. It's just wasting time and self-sabotaging yourself if you don't spend the adequate time to learn the question type properly before you start your own practice. All of these considerations were super important to me when I was making my own decision to choose what UCAT prep companies were best for me. In the end, I went for Medify, which was my question bank that I used later and much closer to my exam. And then I went with iCanMed to teach me everything I needed to know about approaching the UCAT exam. From my experience, iCanMed was actually the only company that I found that had it all pretty much sorted. Like, I could actually see this Kolb cycle in the way that they were guiding us as students. And if you think about it, you're not going to really see this from other companies if they don't know what they're doing. And in fact, before I went with iCanMed, I was scoring around 70% in the UMAT, and then a similar score in my early UCAT prep as well. But because I was part of this Kolb cycle, it meant that I was able to learn these question types correctly the first time, and then I'll be able to refine them before I actually went into my UCAT exam. And when I went into the UCAT exam, I wasn't even thinking about these strategies themselves, because I was so confident with them that it was just second nature. And that's just comforting when you go into an exam room with such a strict time pressure. Okay, so this is why I've actually spoken with the iCanMed team, since it's crunch time now for the UCAT, to organize a 65% off sale for people who use the coupon code ARCHER. It's a special sale for those who specifically use my coupon code, and that's just for my viewers, and it actually is more than the existing sale on their site. So if you're looking to get on top of the UCAT before it's too late, please check out iCanMed.com.au. I've got a link to the iCanMed website and to my coupon code in the description below. They've got free videos and blogs about how you can start thinking about the UCAT the right way, and they've also got some free videos about how they go through some question types. Each question on their site has a video answer which goes through the exact process that you need to follow in approaching the question type. And most importantly to me, I was able to message the iCanMed team 24/7 for any support that I needed. So essentially they were a tutor there for me whenever I needed that support. Okay, that's it guys. iCanMed was pivotal in helping me get through this medicine application process and smashing the UCAT. And so it would be great if you guys could check them out and consider what they have to offer. And feel free to check out any of my other videos if you haven't seen them already about how you can improve your scores in tests and exams for university or school. Okay guys, thanks again for watching and bye-bye.